While Ireland may be associated with cold pints of beer, cool accents, and leprechauns, it also just happens to be one of the richest countries on the planet. And while low corporate taxes have played a role in this rise to riches, the full story is a little more complicated and a lot more scandalous. So, grab a coffee, sit back, and relax as we tell you why Ireland is one of the world's wealthiest countries on this episode of the Rooster Report. But before we do, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notifications button so that you never miss out on any of our latest videos. According to the IMF's 2021 figures, Ireland's GDP per capita of $94,556 makes it the third richest country in the world. For those of you who don't know, GDP per capita essentially takes a country's GDP and divides it by its population. And as any economist who's worth their salt can tell you, this makes it a confusing and rather misleading metric. After all, countries like the Cayman Islands and Luxembourg have used super low to non-existent taxes to artificially boost their GDP per capita, and many have accused Ireland of doing the same. But believe it or not, Ireland is not quite as business-friendly as you may think. Sure, at the moment their corporate tax of 12.5% pales in comparisons to the United States' 21%. And while their 25% tax credits for innovation and low 6.25% tax on intellectual property help sweeten the deal, there are countries like Bermuda and the Cayman Islands that have corporate tax rates of 0%. Yet, despite the fact that there are better options out there, Ireland still manages to keep corporations around. After all, major names like Google, PayPal, and Airbnb all have headquarters there to this very day. So, this begs the question, why don't major corporations take their business elsewhere? Well, to see why, we have to look at Ireland's shady economic past. Perhaps the most infamous ploy that brought corporations to Ireland is the double Irish with a Dutch sandwich tax avoidance scheme. Corporations would start by setting up 2 Irish subsidiaries and 1 Dutch subsidiary. Subsidiary 1 would have its base in a 0% tax country, such as the Cayman Islands. Subsidiary 2 would be a tax resident in Ireland, and Subsidiary 3 would be a Dutch tax resident. How the scheme would work is that Subsidiary 1 would sell products in, say, the United States. However, Subsidiary 1 would then allow Subsidiary 2 to collect a 100% royalty on this profit. However, in order to avoid Irish taxes, Subsidiary 1 would first send these profits to the Dutch subsidiary, who would then send them to Subsidiary 2. If all was done correctly, since Subsidiary 2 was from the Cayman Islands, it could then hold all of these profits tax-free forever, with all of this being 100% legal. Ireland also attracted corporations with its innovative Shannon Free Zone. First opened in 1959, it was essentially a 2.43 square kilometer manufacturing area where goods would only be taxed after leaving the nearby Shannon Airport. What this meant was that corporations could fly in parts and manufacture them without paying any tariffs or manufacturing taxes. And this not only made it cheap to manufacture goods there, but also convenient, since Ireland is located directly between the United States and Europe, has strong intellectual property laws, and is home to millions of highly educated English-speaking workers. Now, to be fair, this setup wasn't perfect. After all, since most trade is conducted using cargo boats, this free trade zone only made sense for high-quality goods that had to be shipped via an airplane, such as microchips and diamonds. However, this was a sweet enough deal for major companies such as Intel, Lufthansa, and De Beers to set up shop there, making the Shannon Free Zone a sweeping success. However, both this tax scheme and free trade area aren't really around anymore. Due to heavy international pressure, the double Irish with the Dutch sandwich loophole was closed to new companies in 2015, and existing corporations that used it had until 2020 to change their plans. Additionally, in 2003, the Shannon Free Zone stopped offering its lucrative tax incentives, making it a far less attractive place to do business. Yet, despite this, corporations stuck around. In regards to the double Irish and Dutch sandwich, Ireland softened the blow of its discontinuation by making it extremely cheap for businesses to withdraw their profits in Ireland once the loophole was closed in 2020. Therefore, many of these companies decided to withdraw and invest their money in Ireland rather than bring the money elsewhere and be subject to heavy taxes. Additionally, despite the Shannon Free Zone having stopped its tax incentives in 2003, the machines that were set up there were extremely expensive. Therefore, since Ireland still is relatively business-friendly, most corporations have decided that it wasn't worth it to set up shop elsewhere. As such, although Ireland is no longer as friendly to corporations as it used to be, it has been able to ingeniously use its more business-friendly past to guarantee a continuous corporate presence even with its now higher tax rates. But despite having a high GDP per capita, Ireland has been criticized for doing a poor job at passing this wealth down to its citizens. And yes, it's true that Ireland's big corporations hire tens of thousands of high-skilled workers, but that doesn't mean that they have helped the average citizen. That's because if we crunch the numbers, it becomes clear that the lives of most Irish residents aren't as rosy as the GDP figures make it seem. One of the main indicators of this is its GNI. Used to calculate income from a country's citizens and businesses, this figure does not include the incomes of foreign companies that invest there. In the case of Ireland, its GNI is about 40% lower than its GDP, and this means that while Ireland ranks second in the EU when using GDP per capita, it ranks just 8th when using GNI per capita. The situation begins to look even worse when looking at actual individual consumption per capita. This measures the amount of goods and services that people in a country actually consume, and in this regard, Ireland's consumption is just 95% of the EU average, making it a below-average country in Europe despite its supposedly strong economy. To top this off, if we look at market income inequality, which measures income inequality before taxes and benefits are applied, Ireland ranks dead last in the EU. This has ultimately resulted in a situation where Ireland's most educated citizens hold high-paying corporate jobs, while the rest have to deal with poor job prospects and extremely high rents, creating a cycle of poverty that is one of the most profound in the developed world. So, what do you think? Is Ireland a model country, or do you think that its policies have been a net negative for its citizens? Let us know in the comments down below, and if you enjoy these types of videos, please consider subscribing so that you never miss out on any of our latest content. Until next time.